Hello, I'm Ben Domencino, and this is Weatherpulse. A supermoon, a blue moon, and a blood moon will all be visible over parts of Australia on Wednesday night. Here's everything you need to know about this rare lunar event.
At the end of this month, on the 31st of January 2018, there's a total lunar eclipse. This is when the moon passes into Earth's shadow. So we have the sun shining towards the Earth, and the moon will be on exactly the other side of the Earth. This one is a little different in some ways. For some parts of Australia, it will also be a blue moon, and it's also a supermoon. In this case, it's a total lunar eclipse, so the moon will pass through the central or most dark part of the Earth's shadow, which we call the umbra. And in fact, during that time, it doesn't go completely dark, as you might expect, but it turns red. And that's because the Earth has an atmosphere. So the sunlight passing the Earth is bent by the Earth's atmosphere into the shadow. The red light passes through the atmosphere and continues on to illuminate the moon, giving that reddish, or brownish, or blood red colour. The blue light is scattered out by Earth's atmosphere. The modern definition of a blue moon is that it's the second full moon in a calendar month. Now, this is the modern definition from about the 1940s. Previous definition had it as the third full moon in a season, but there was an error of interpretation made by a popular astronomy magazine in the 40s, and so that modern definition of the second full moon in a calendar month has taken hold. And they occur reasonably regularly, perhaps every few years. Sometimes we get a couple in a year. The definition is fairly arbitrary. It was first established by an astrologer for reasons of his own, and it's been adopted by astronomers around the world. It's when a full or a new moon occurs when the moon is within about 90% of its minimum distance to the Earth in any particular orbit. So in this particular case, the moon is at its closest to Earth on January the 30th. We call that perigee. The next day, the lunar eclipse happens. The moon passes through Earth's shadow. So it's very, very close to that time when it was at perigee. It is within that 90% limit. Typically, we get between about 3 and 6 eclipses of one type or another during any single year. Some of those will be lunar eclipses, such as we're about to experience at the end of January. Some of them will be solar eclipses, the ones that you need to wear eye protection for. To see all three of these at the same time, a total lunar eclipse, the blue moon, plus a supermoon all at once, would, I think, only happen on the order of centuries. In the Americas, they're talking about the last total lunar eclipse on a blue moon happening about 150 years ago. Now in Australia, we actually had a total lunar eclipse and a blue moon in the 60s and in the 80s. But to have a supermoon on top of those events would mean that we extend that rarity perhaps out to on the order of a century, perhaps a little more than that. On the night of January the 31st, in the late evening, look up to the northeast to eastern sky, and you'll see a small dark chunk of the moon, a bite taken out of the moon. As the moon moves through the shadow of the Earth, that bite will increase in size, and the moon will darken gradually across its face. When the moon enters the darkest inner part of Earth's shadow, the umbra, it turns a reddish colour. And it'll last that reddish colour for an hour or so, and then it will gradually move out of the shadow, and you'll see the darkness shrinking until it becomes another small bite on the other side of the moon's face. The whole event takes around 4 to 5 hours to occur. Everyone across Australia and New Zealand, in fact, will be able to see this lunar eclipse. In fact, anybody on this side of the Earth, which is facing towards the moon, the night side of the Earth at that stage. So the times for the eclipse will vary depending on your state and your location in Australia and whether or not you follow daylight saving times. For instance, for New South Wales and Sydney, it starts around about 10:48. But for other states it'll be at a slightly different time. So this has been called a super blue blood moon. But in fact it's not a blue moon for everyone in Australia. And the problem is that some states have daylight saving. And that daylight saving time pushes the second full moon that would have been in January and would have been the blue moon. It pushes that full moon into the early hours of February. So for New South Wales in particular and a few other states, it's not a blue moon this time round. However, there is a blue moon in March, and all of Australia will experience a blue moon at the end of March. So if you miss the January blue moon, you've got another one coming up 2 months later. This total lunar eclipse, all lunar eclipses in fact are completely safe to look at. You don't need any eye protection at all. You can watch them through binoculars and telescopes quite safely as well. Perhaps the best view comes by looking by eye or perhaps a pair of binoculars. If you want to take a photograph, I find that phones tend not to do a good job of such a small object in the sky. It looks large to us, but to a phone it tends to look fairly small. You could try, if you like, having a pair of binoculars held steadily on a stand or a cushion of some kind, and you could hold your phone up to the back of that. If you have a special attachment, you can attach that to a small telescope as well if you have one, and that's worth a try. It's nice to try and get the whole moon in the image if you can. Simply go to the Sydney Observatory website, look up the Observations blog, and you'll find out all the information you need for those events. You can join our Twitter feed or keep an eye on our Facebook page, and announcements of the events and the activities that are happening for this year will come up on those pages and keep you informed for the year.